What if I told you a man turned away his future wife before she even entered his home, only to watch her risk everything to save his ranch from a deadly winter storm? In the harsh Wyoming frontier, Elias Whitmore believed love had already left him forever until a rejected bride proved him wrong. But the secret behind his cold heart and the old rocking chair he refused to touch would change their lives forever. This is a story about two wounded people who thought their best days were behind them, a man trapped by the memories of what he lost, and a woman who arrived carrying her own pain. But together, they discovered that sometimes the person who changes your life is the person you almost let walk away. In 1884, a young widow stepped off a train carrying only a small suitcase, a Bible, and a letter from a man who did not want her anymore. She had crossed hundreds of miles for a new beginning. Instead, she found a locked door, a silent ranch, and a man who had already decided she did not belong. This is the story of Clara Bennett, the bride who was rejected before she was ever loved. The bride who was sent away. The winter winds of Wyoming territory could cut through a person like a knife. For Elias Whitmore, winter was nothing new. For 12 years, he had survived storms, droughts, and long, lonely nights on his ranch outside a small frontier settlement called Willow Creek. But the hardest thing he survived was not the weather. It was losing his family. Years earlier, Elias had buried his wife, Anna, after a sudden illness. A few months later, his little boy followed her. After that, the ranch became silent. Every morning, Elias prepared 1 cup of coffee. Every evening, he returned to a house that remembered the people who were no longer there. The kitchen table had only 1 chair that was ever used. The bedroom door stayed closed, and in the corner of the living room sat an old wooden rocking chair. Anna's chair. Elias never moved it, never sat in it, never allowed anyone else to touch it. To everyone else, it was just an old piece of furniture. To Elias, it was the last piece of a life that was gone. Then one spring morning, Elias made a decision. Not because he wanted love, because he needed help. The ranch was too large for one man. So he placed a marriage notice in a newspaper. He wrote simple words. Rancher seeks honest woman willing to build a home in Wyoming territory. But Elias had no idea that the woman who answered his letter would bring something far more powerful than help with the ranch. She would bring a challenge he had spent years avoiding, the chance to feel again. He expected someone practical, someone who understood that frontier marriage was often about survival. He did not expect someone who would ask him to open his heart, but that was exactly who arrived. The empty house and the forgotten chair. Clara Bennett arrived in Willow Creek after a 3-day train journey. She stepped onto the platform wearing a dark blue coat and holding a small suitcase. Inside that suitcase were a few dresses, her Bible, and a photograph of her late husband. Clara had known loss too. Her husband had died 2 years earlier, leaving her alone and struggling to survive. The school where she worked closed during hard times. Her family could not support her. So when she saw Elias's marriage notice, she believed it was not just an opportunity. It was a second chance. She did not arrive looking for a perfect husband. She arrived hoping for a place where her own broken pieces could finally rest. But when Elias saw her standing outside his ranch house, his expression changed. He looked at her. Then he looked away. Miss Bennett, he said quietly. Yes, Mr. Whitmore. I believe there has been a misunderstanding. Clara held the letter tighter. The notice said you were looking for a wife. I was. The pause afterward was painful. Elias looked toward the empty house. I thought I was ready. If you had traveled hundreds of miles only to be rejected at the door, would you have left? Or would you have stayed like Clara? Those words hurt more than anger would have. Because Clara realized something. This man had not changed his mind because of her. He had changed his mind because of the memories inside that house. Elias offered her money for a return train ticket. Most people would have accepted. But Clara did something he did not expect. She refused. I did not travel across half the country to be paid to leave, she said. Elias looked surprised. Then what will you do? Clara looked at the ranch. I will work. But Clara did not know that the silent ranch she entered was carrying a secret pain far heavier than any winter storm. And with those 2 words, The woman he rejected stepped onto the land she would eventually save. The winter that tested them. At first, life at the Whitmore ranch was difficult. Elias was polite, but distant. He showed Clara where everything was. The kitchen, the guest room, the supplies. But he never showed her his heart. The town noticed. People whispered. She was sent away before she even arrived. She should have gone back home. Maybe there was a reason he refused her. But Clara ignored them. She helped repair fences. She cooked meals. She organized supplies. And slowly, something strange happened. The ranch began to feel alive again. For years, Elias thought silence protected him. But slowly, he began to realize that silence had also kept him alone. One evening, Elias returned home after checking the cattle. He stopped at the doorway. He heard something he had not heard in years. A fire crackling. A kettle boiling. A woman humming softly. For a moment, he almost forgot he was standing in his own house. Then he saw Clara near the old rocking chair. She was cleaning dust from it. Elias froze. "Leave that alone." His voice was sharper than he intended. Clara turned. "I'm sorry. That chair stays untouched." She looked at him carefully. "Why? But what do you think was hidden behind Elias's attachment to that old rocking chair? Was it only a memory, or something much deeper?" Elias had no answer. Because the truth was too painful. That chair was the place where Anna used to hold their son. It was the last place where his family still existed. "I just don't want it changed," he finally said. Clara nodded. "I understand." But that night, Elias realized something. For the first time in years, someone had entered his home without trying to erase his past. That night, Clara realized the chair was not the thing Elias was protecting. He was protecting the memory of the family he believed he would never have again. Neither of them knew that the coming winter would test everything they believed about trust, survival, and love. The truth hidden beneath the silence. As the months passed, Elias began seeing Clara differently. Not as a stranger, not as a replacement for what he lost, but as someone who carried her own pain. One evening, Clara finally told him about her husband. "He was a good man," she said. Elias looked at her. "Do you still love him?" Clara smiled sadly. "Yes." Elias lowered his eyes. "Then why come here?" "Because loving someone I lost does not mean I cannot care for someone still living." Those words stayed with Elias. Because he realized Clara understood something he did not. A heart could remember the past without refusing the future. But the storm would uncover a truth Elias had hidden for years. A truth that explained why he pushed everyone away. But before Elias could answer, winter arrived. And it came harder than anyone expected. Snow buried the roads. The wind destroyed fences. The temperature dropped below freezing. Then, one night, the worst happened. A storm struck the ranch. The cattle broke through a damaged fence. The barn roof began collapsing under heavy snow. And Elias was trapped outside trying to save the animals. Inside the house, Clara heard the storm. She knew something was wrong. The storm was getting worse by the minute. The animals were scattered, the barn was collapsing, and Elias was running out of time. But the greatest danger was not the freezing wind outside. It was the possibility that the man who had already lost so much would lose everything again. If you were Clara, knowing this man had rejected you once before, would you risk everything to save him? So she did something no one expected. She walked into the blizzard. The night she saved everything. The snow was so thick Clara could barely see. But she kept moving. She found Elias near the barn, struggling to pull a frightened horse away from falling wood. "Clara, what are you doing out here?" The question almost made her laugh. "What are you doing out here?" Together, they worked. Clara held the lantern. She opened gates. She guided animals into safety. She did not complain. She did not run. She stayed. Hours passed. Finally, the storm weakened. The ranch survived. But Elias did not look at the damage. He looked at Clara. The woman he had rejected had risked her life for him. "You should have left," he whispered. Clara looked at him. "I almost did." Elias looked down. "But I stayed because this place became my home too." Those words broke something inside him. Not something painful. Something frozen. But saving the ranch was only the beginning. The hardest thing Clara had to save was the heart of the man who believed he could never love again. The chair that was never empty again. The next morning, Willow Creek saw something they never expected. Elias Whitmore walked into town, and Clara walked beside him. Not behind him, beside him. He told everyone the truth. She saved my ranch. But Clara knew something else had happened. She had saved more than a ranch. She had saved a man who believed his best days were already behind him. Months later, Elias finally touched the old rocking chair. For years, Elias believed touching that chair meant leaving Anna behind. But Clara taught him something he never understood. Remembering the past does not mean refusing the future. But Clara helped him understand. Remembering someone did not mean refusing to live. One evening, Elias placed a small blanket over the chair. Then he looked at Clara. I think Anna would have liked you. Clara smiled. I think she would have liked you being happy again. The chair that once represented an empty home became the place where a new family gathered. A year later, the rocking chair was no longer sitting alone in the corner. It sat beside the fireplace, beside a new cradle, beside a home filled with laughter. Years later, the same chair that once represented everything Elias lost would hold the laughter of everything he gained. Years passed, and when Elias and Clara grew old, their grandchildren would sit near that same chair and ask about the woman who saved the ranch during the great winter storm. Elias would smile. He would look at Clara, and he would say, she arrived as a stranger. She stayed as a friend, and she became the reason this house became a home. The old rocking chair that once held only memories became proof of something Elias learned too late. Sometimes the person who arrives to heal your life does not look like the person you were waiting for. Sometimes they are the person you almost let walk away. And sometimes, the heart finds home in the very place it once refused to open. If stories of courage, second chances, and forgotten love from the old frontier touch your heart, join us for more journeys where lost souls find their way home. And remember, sometimes the greatest love stories begin with the person someone almost walked away from.